as the fight for and the definition of free speech continues on today, as there's been some reports now from the Jimmy Kimmel Live situation. Of course, we're talking about Jimmy Kimmel, a late-night talk show host, really the second of the big three to be taken off the air. This one due specifically to a comment he made regarding Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk's shooter, referring to it being as sort of one of the conservative group, one of the MAGA kind of people, a lie. Now, that opens up a whole can of worms because there has been some push from the FCC, and obviously there's push from a few different groups, Nexstar and Sinclair, which both own a large amount of affiliate stations. Remember, ABC is a broadcast. This is not this over-the-air broadcast. These are not cable stations. They're obviously available in your cable stations, but these are specifically run that way. I have to say, I come at it from a very unique point of view. I not only hosted a late-night talk show for a while on Christian television, I actually was thrown off the air for something I said on one of the major networks. Or not for something I said necessarily, but maybe for something I didn't say. They didn't like that our show, I'll go into specifics on it, they didn't like our show, didn't have like a preaching and teaching segment. It was a comedy late-night talk show that featured Christian musicians. We thought we were going at a very different angle to approach people differently. The network disagreed. Who do you think won in that situation? The network. Now, did I leave bitter? Do I still think there was more things at work there than necessarily what was put on the... Sure. But you know what? That was 20 years ago. I could look back on it and go, it was their network. They had the decision, the right to make it. And they did. Jimmy Kimmel then, all reports are leading to this in both Wall Street Journal and the Hollywood Reporter. And the reason I say Hollywood Reporter is because you're talking about an industry trade. You're not talking about anything that's coming at you from a political agenda necessarily. Said we have details of what happened. And those details were that Jimmy Kimmel had meetings with the top brass at Disney. We're talking about the top of the top, Bob Iger and friends. And what he wanted to say on air to what they thought would be to clear the air was not enough, not suffice. And what they essentially said was enough to essentially double down on his claims. And Disney said, well, we're going to put you indefinitely on hiatus. And that is what has happened right now. The fight for free speech continues. People keep talking about that. You see that in these comments. And look, I think it's a slippery slope. I think we have to be careful. I'm not saying that I'm happy that this has happened to Jimmy Kimmel.
What we've seen, especially of the reporting over the last day, one, we know that his contract negotiations, like it wouldn't have ended until next year. So this would be an early exit from that. But we have also seen that they gave him the opportunity to basically tone it down, to lower the temperature. And if the Hollywood Reporter, they say that the executives, including Bob Iger, the top of the top in Disney, wanted Kimmel to address the situation in a way that would take the temperature down. But what he had planned was going to fan the flames with the MAGA fan base, the sources say.
Quote.
This is a quote from the Hollywood Reporter. So he wasn't going to go forward. And to be fair to Jimmy Kimmel, his tweet after the assassination of Charlie Kirk was very had a lot of humility to it. It was what you'd expect to see from people. The statement he made, which wasn't about Charlie Kirk directly, it was about conservatives trying to say that the assassin was a part of the conservative base, is what causes firestorm. And Disney, as we've seen them kind of course correct from going full on into feeding what the left tribe really wanted from media back into and making amends with Gina Carano, settling that lawsuit, saying she can come back and work with us. They are trying to course correct. And one of their hosts that has a prime spot and was making news all over the world because President Trump even addressed it from England.
Carriage ride.
He wasn't going to do what his bosses thought was necessary to set it up for success in the future.
When you look at that show and that network and whatever that Disney has been going through the last decade, bringing back Bob Iger, as Will said, all the things they've done to try to course correct. Of course, they knew they were going to take some heat from this. They were getting some flack for this. Did they think that there was this much? Probably. But they anticipated taking that risk. Was it worth that risk? And they think it is. That's what you got to remember. They think it's worth that risk. Obviously, Nexstar was the first one to make the call, and then Sinclair. You got those affiliates. Disney could have said, you know what? We're going to move it to Disney+. We're going to move it to somewhere else where you can get this show because we have access to millions of people. There's more people that watch Disney+, truthfully, than watch over the air at 11:30 at night.
220,000 viewers in the demographic in quarter two of this year.
Right.
How is a show profitable? It's not.
It's not.
We know it's not, but there's no way to make enough advertising revenue to pay. Just his salary was $16 million.
Yeah.
You think about the staff, the live band, the location, all of that. It, like you said, 50 to 100 million. We know that Colbert was 100 million to produce.
Yeah.
The Kimmel numbers aren't as public.
The real estate is alone, where the Jimmy Kimmel Live
Right.
studio is, alone has got to be worth way more than that.
Right.
Right there on Hollywood Boulevard. The truth is, this show is, Disney made a corporate decision. They are beholden to who? The stockholders. And the stockholders were about to have an advertising backlash. And what happens then? Your stock plummets once again, and Disney's stuck in another situation. Do I think that we need to be going on there and making like an example of this for Jimmy Kimmel? No, I don't. I have no feelings one way or the other towards him. He said some really nasty stuff before, but who hasn't? I think in some ways these shows are just made to get connections with celebrities still. Like, it's still good for The Tonight Show to exist for NBC because they then have this relationship with Hollywood they don't necessarily have. I feel that way kind of true with all three of them. CBS just decided it's not worth it for us anymore. We don't need it.
I think we're dealing with two different issues here. First, let's take the First Amendment free speech argument. I think Republicans have been very consistent to say we are not for policing people's speech. We're not for policing people's mean speech even. The protected speech is speech that we don't always like and that is uncomfortable. But there's a fundamental difference between violence, celebrating violence, and then, being at a corporation or a job where it has become a problem because you're celebrating violence. And so you're free to say that, but your corporation, the business that you work for, is also free to say, this isn't a good look for us and we're going to let you go. We have been consistent that free speech is absolutely protected by the Constitution, and yet there are consequences when you say certain things. Now, the left, I think, has not been consistent because they've switched the argument. First, it was, your words are a problem and words are what needs to be policed, and that's how we led to the cancel culture. And now what they're trying to say is, no, we embrace the First Amendment suddenly when there are consequences for their words. So I think that's the first argument. When it comes to Jimmy Kimmel, I think it has nothing to do with his First Amendment rights or the words that he's saying. I think it has everything to do with the fact that the affiliates have made a calculus that it just is financially ruinous for them to be associated with Jimmy Kimmel.
Here's what I want to know, because I've saw Eric Swalwell wearing a Jimmy Kimmel Live hat, which if he already had that,
he was a guest.
Yeah. I mean, that's bizarre. But then also Elizabeth Warren, preaching about freedom of speech and all this. Where were all these elected Democrat officials when the Biden administration a few years ago was putting together a disinformation governance board in the Department of Homeland Security, creating the Ministry of Truth, as we've called it? Or where were they when they were pushing to deplatform people from social media because of things they were putting out there?